Honde Onde Mtsan. This is Thongya, a podcast by the District 7 Legislative Office. I'm your host, Warren Wheaton. Our co-host, Dr. Jerry Bread, not able to join us this month, but we've got a special guest with us here in the studio. Amanda Hill is with the Kiowa tribe, works in the Historic Preservation Office, and her title is the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Kiowa tribe. She's been in that position a couple years. When were you hired in that position, Amanda?
I came into this position in May of 23.
Okay. So May of 23, and we're happy to have her here with us and share a little bit about our program. So just a little bit of what we do. Amanda, this is our podcast. You're just talking to over half the tribe, that want to listen in to District 7 programs. We started this about a year ago. I can't believe it. It's been a year since we did our first podcast on where the tribe is going, to have conversations about ideas and focus in on, what we're doing currently and what needs to happen in the future, and letting people know about what's going on in our different programs. So just if you'd start off, give us an introduction of who you are, maybe your family background. I don't know if we want to hear the whole tree because we'd be here for over an hour. But, introduce yourself, where you come from, a little bit of your background, how you got into this work, and just introduce the program if you'd like to a little bit about what it's doing, its current trajectory, and we'll just go from there.
Okay, well, thank you for the invitation to here today. My name is Amanda Hill, and like you had said, Warren, I am the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Kiowa tribe. I come from, my parents are Daya Del Haintaw and Michael Hill. I come from the Haintaw, the Dogamaw, the Tenadaw, Sepuhuro, Red Teepee, those families. I was born and raised in Carnegie, Oklahoma. Very blessed to have been raised by my grandmother and my great-grandfather, Mary Haindaw and Taff Haindaw. I spent a lot of time, in the area. My folks, my Atan, my great-grandfather, he was the leader of Kiowa Gorkland and many other, responsibilities amongst the tribe. So that led to, us, being in a lot of spaces, in support of him in those positions. Mm-hmm. And I was able to, pick up a lot of things along the way and was blessed to be, around a lot of teachers in my youth. And so developed the early respect and, valued these ways as a young person. Continued my life and, in the home area, working in various capacities and raised a small family of 4 Kiowas. I have 2 boys and 2 girls. So, raised them in the Carnegie area, all graduates of Carnegie High School. Coming into different places and taking care of our cultural places along the way, was applied for this position, in May of 2023, and was hired on to establish the Tribal Historic Preservation Office for the Kiowa tribe. So previously, there were other tribal members that carried the title, had been appointed the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, but never before had we established our agreement with the National Park Service and fully established, a TIPO office. Mm-hmm. So that became my initial, responsibility, was to write the agreement with the National Park Service. We were able to do so that first year, wrote our agreement with the National Park Service, had it signed and completed in October, becoming the 220th nation, in the United States to establish the TIPO office through the National Park Service. So we were very proud of that. Within the TIPO and the National Park Service, you have to establish your agreement with the National Park Service, establish your TIPO program before you're eligible to apply for funding. So within our first year, we established our agreement, like I said, and qualified for federal funding. The following fiscal year, we're able to apply for our tribal funding through the National Park Service for our program, and we're able to receive those funds. So that's kind of how I came to be in this position and how we established.
So currently, how is the Tribal Historic Preservation Office currently funded
It's currently funded by the National Park Service through federal grant.
for a federal grant?
Yes.
Will the well, we'll come back to this question, but I want you to make sure you answer. People may have a question about like, what does this temporary freeze on federal funds have? How will it impact the program? I'd like to come back to that question if we may
Okay.
at the end. So, what is your vision for the Tribal Historic Preservation? What work do you want to see the tribe do more of in terms of like preserving or maintaining our historic preservation or identity?
A lot of the way that this work, a lot of the Tribal Historic Preservation Office is described. It's definitely an expression of sovereignty, and I would like to see more more of our own storytelling when it comes to that history and that sharing. Oftentimes, a lot of our tribes, say like not going to name other tribes, but some tribes are very well versed, very, very researched, very. There's a lot of documentation out there, a lot of resources available for, not just the immediate culture or language, but also the history and the interactions of such. Kiowas, we have a lot of resources available to us, but being able to bring those things home into a central space and to have that history shared, those are some of my goals. A lot of our oral history, Kiowas, we have an oral tradition, oral storytelling. A lot of our history, our ways, our culture, those things are passed down orally.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, those lines, that knowledge, has had gaps, in the previous generations due to colonization and just the lifestyles that we have to live now and the disbursement of our people. Our people are no longer located geographically in one area in southwest Oklahoma. We are spread out across this country. So those interactions and the way that we share our history and our culture have changed. And I think that we need to acknowledge that and look at it and try to come together in the consensus as what we can do about that to further our sharing as we go forward into future generations. So, of course, the documentation of our history. Also, my personal goal when it comes to historic preservation, for me, it's very difficult to go in these spaces and to talk about how our people once were here, how our people once utilized these cultural resources, how we want and to have those discussions. I don't want to just have those discussions or have those consultations. I want to be able to bridge those things and to once again see my people in these spaces, to see my people utilizing these cultural resources once again in our cultural life. And I see this position in this office as a way to coordinate that. Mm-hmm. A lot of the work that we do, sometimes it just takes that simple, just that placing of that idea. It might not be something that we have in policy within our state parks, within our public spaces or our national parks, but placing those ideas and those needs and putting them in the right ears and being able to work together to bring those resources back and make those opportunities available. So, and there's plenty of opportunities for that to happen, whether it be, just to kind of give a few examples of some of the work that we did last year, utilizing our consultations and our government to government, relationships with the U.S. Forestry. We were able to establish a good neighbor agreement with the U.S. Forestry at Medbo in southern Wyoming, and we're able to be provided with funding to travel and harvest our lodgepole pine for our teepee poles. So traveling back to an ancestral land fully funded to bring back cultural resources. And all of that, came just via those conversations and those idea sharings and people working together in those spaces to make them happen. The same with, we had a youth camp in Fisher's Peak in Colorado, being able to take our youth into these, our traditional spaces and our ancestral lands and to see them once again in those spaces to be able to learn about land management, to learn, our historic presence in these spaces, what our people will be doing in these mountains, the harvesting that we taught them how to traditionally harvest the medicines, how to take care of the water in these spaces, how all of these ecosystems are tied to our needs. And, we did some primitive camping and all of these things. And just to see them in these spaces, oftentimes our people, and especially our younger, generations, they're not aware that we are a northern people, that we are a mountain people. We have been generationally located, either in Southwest Oklahoma or, that area. And, I'm not sure if everybody's been to Southwest Oklahoma, but it's pretty flat. And, the majority of our cultural stories are our creation stories, those places of our sacred sites, those places that tie us to that landscape and to those, to that relationship with those spaces. They're all up north. They're all, very, far located away from us. And oftentimes our people, we don't have the opportunity to visit these places and let alone develop that relationship, with that land and that space once again. So just trying to find, like I said, those opportunities and to make sure that we're not just talking about that past or that historic presence or, the things that we once did in these spaces, but also looking forward to the future and trying to figure out how we can bring those things back to our people going into the future.
So I know that we have a historic preservation office at the Kiowa tribe. And it seems like your vision really is about maintaining that identity through connection to oral tradition, to sacred spaces that our tribe once inhabited. And I know that there's a lot of tasks that are assigned to you as, people. You mentioned consultation. I think that's a lot for one person to take on. So kind of explain your role in being a consultant to National Park Service, anybody that has a Section 108 request.
106, yes.
Yeah, Section 106 request. Talk about that, what your thought is on that. Do you think that needs to be two positions? Just to kind of inform, maybe you can start by telling us what each does. Your current role, you just explained that, but what does a Section 106 consultant do? And how many requests you get a year?
The Section 106 responsibilities are just one of the responsibilities in which we've assumed from the State Historic Preservation Office in our agreement with the National Park Service. So, like I said, it's one of our duties. And the Section 106, Section 106 requires, tribal consultation when it comes to projects that have that are on federal lands, that are utilizing any federal funding, anything that will be of ground disturbance and things of this nature, those types of projects within either our trust lands or our ancestral lands. So for the Kiowa tribe, we have about a little over 33,000 acres of trust lands, Kiowa trust lands. We co-manage and co-manage the KCA lands, which is a little over 6,000 acres of trust land. And then we have our ancestral lands, which is everywhere that the Kiowa tribe has been, all the spaces in which we can say that we have historic presence. And the Kiowa tribe was a very nomadic tribe. And so our historic presence ranges all the way from our migration patterns are as documented. We're told we come from the old country, the cold country, which is, northern and Canada and then British Columbia, Alberta area, coming on down into Montana and all the way down to the tips of Mexico in our journeys, in our raiding and our trading routes. So there's there's around 17 states where we can have documentation of Kiowa presence. So those being inclusive of our ancestral lands. Now that being said, all of those spaces, and going back to what I had said about whatever project that's being started that has initiating with federal funds that has some sort of federal nexus, that's going to trigger a Section 106 consultation review. So our office can receive hundreds of requests for Section 106 review a month.
Anywhere in that area, from
Anywhere
Canada to
from
Mexico.
from a federal agency changing their windows or their
Wow.
or their drapes to, I mean, if it's a historic site, then any type of, like I said, project and those things will trigger a Section 106. So for right now, being the one-man band, just going through, literally my Section 106 duties right now are a lot of reading. I skim through. I want to look at, are they near any of our sacred sites? Are they near any of our cultural resources, places that we deem of high importance? Are there the groundbreaking, the ground disturbance projects, things of those nature that are interacting, that are going to be in areas that are high probability of cultural resources within the ground? Those types of projects are that will be elevated in priority, and will engage in that consultation. I have steadily engaged in our sacred spaces when it comes to the National Park Service, which is of course our funding agency. But so for the Kiowa tribe and many others, a lot of our sacred sites are within the National Park Service management now, being Yellowstone, Devil's Tower. A lot of our U.S. forestry areas, like those spaces, are now within federal management. So not only does it trigger our Section 106, but it also triggers another one of our responsibilities that we've assumed from the SHPA, which is the government-to-government consultation.
So we've had our Kiowa Tribal Museum in operation for, as long as I've been there. It's been in the complex. Is there any plans that you've heard from the tribe of a new museum in the future?
I know that we have been working together with the grants department, Ms. Lahoma Zotai and Abraham Pedro, on looking at what type of funding is out there available for us for the establishment of a new facility within our cultural grounds in Carnegie. So as of right now, I'm not trying to keep going back to the federal funding issue, but as of right now, that's kind of on hold because of a lot of the federal issues that we're going through. But again, that's our priority as of right now, is to locate that funding to not only build a new facility, but to also hire high quality professional individuals to which to care for our cultural resources.
So it's in the plans for the future. There's just nothing current right now because we're kind of waiting to see what this budget crisis has in store for tribes like us. And so I guess that brings up a question of a repository or depository service or system for Kiowa-related services in terms of historic preservation. Say, if a Kiowa person wanted to hand over their personal collection of peyote music, is there any plans, or is that going to be a repository or depository going to be housed within that museum to accept that stuff?
Within the museum, yes, there would be a repository built for our storage purposes. We have also a lot of the work that I did last year involved a lot of the NAGPRA repatriations of some very important tribal artifacts, inclusive of Chief Dohassen's calendar, St. Thaides, War Shield, two Fort Marion ledgers, ledger books were returned back to the Kiowa tribe. So within these repatriations, seeing as how we don't have our established museum or repository, I was also tasked with kind of finding new homes for and temporary homes, for these items. So working together with the Oklahoma Historical Society, and also UC Berkeley, California. Dr. Ross Frank from UC Berkeley is a director of the PILA project, which is the largest online digital collection of ledger art. We also have a few ledger books and within Berkeley's collections that we're working on repatriating. So with all of these this relationship built, we went ahead and had an agreement of duty of care placed within Berkeley for the ledger books that we had repatriated from the Missouri Historical Society. So heavily relying upon, our networking and our established relationships within these institutions, because these items are now rightfully returned to the Kiowa tribe legally within our possession, but awaiting their permanent home.
Sure. Amanda, to what extent should the tribe, we'll say, regulate? To what extent should they regulate the integrity of Kiowa culture and history?
I think that's an excellent question. It's kind of a modern issue from which we're all kind of looking at. So going back to my youth and the way that I saw things as I was growing up, there was no interaction when it came to that, like the government and traditional people. They were very separate. And our programs, although we had a lot of different programs within the Kiowa tribe at that time, they were more about just regulated services. We didn't see what we're seeing today, which is a lot of our programs, a lot of the federally funded programs have a cultural component within their services. This is, to me, a new issue within our tribe. This is kind of blended, that government, the resources and the services that we expect our tribal government to provide. It's kind of shifted that, and now there is that expectancy from the tribal government to
Add a
have
cultural
that,
component.
have that cultural be part of their services and the resources in which they provide. So that's new. So we're looking at all of those issues as we're moving forward, in this direction. And yes, I do think that we need to be very careful in those movements, in those inclusions of that culture, because we are definitely would suggest, utilizing our elders in the area, our cultural, our knowledge keepers, for when it comes to any of these cultural programs in which the tribes are trying to implement. It's really hard to say who is an expert in these areas. It's a conversation that I used to have with my grandpa. You can spend a lifetime learning along these lines, and sometimes you still don't know enough. You can spend your life, trying to find the proper teachers, trying to find the knowledge keepers, looking at our songs, our traditions, our ways, our history, all of those things. So I know, and we can look at one another, and we know who's lived that life. We know who has been exposed to that type of teachings, but it doesn't come with any letters behind your name. It doesn't come with a master's degree that you can put on your resume and answer that question as to who is a cultural expert. So for us, it's always been like those that have been raised around the ones that live that life, ones that have fully embraced those ways and carried them forward. And I guess it kind of goes back to who has the most experience, who has taken care of these things, and that's who we go to for and deem as an expert in those ways.
What's your thought about, I think me and you have talked about this before, but designating maybe some elders or mentors of culture, recognizing that, they have that knowledge and formulating that into some sort of resource for your office and the work that you do, whether it be elder council, whatever we want to call it. I'm not saying that that's what we're just using an example, but some sort of cultural, almost like a mentorship council for you to kind of. Is there any kind of thought you have with that? Like, what would you want to create
Oh
in the
yes,
future?
and I've been utilizing previously. My cultural review board consisted of a lot of our tribal leaders in our traditional areas and our tribal historian.
Okay.
And with the passing of with some tribal losses here lately,
Sure.
trying to go back and kind of look at those things. And yes, I would encourage a cultural program utilizing the people that we have knowledgeable in those spaces. We're we don't have too many left, and I think that we're pressing losing time in this area, establishing a program, putting them in spaces to where they can nurture and groom and guide that next generation into their positions, into their roles is what we should be looking at.
I know just recently, I'm married to an Osage. Um, we were talking about funerals recently, and she actually pulled up some YouTube videos on their rites to an Osage funeral. And I watched it with her, and I thought it was pretty interesting, like the elder was talking about traditional ways of burial and rights that people were due to that type of a Native American. And so he said they had to adapt. They had to. We didn't change what we did, but we had to adapt to the times because those ways became too hard for them as Native people. And it was kind of like he was talking about these. They were ladies. These four ladies. They actually made a dinner, real traditional type. We're gonna make a dinner, and we're gonna invite this elder over to come and talk about. We want to suggest a change to you. And so they did. They said we just want to include these four things to an Osage funeral because there are people that don't go to Native American church, so they couldn't really do Osage rites for burial. And so they gave it to that one elder, and he took it to the other elders and talked about it. And they said, I think we've got a way forward. We're okay with that. Let's try it. And I thought that was pretty interesting how they did it. It seemed really, really simple, But then me and you both know it's not that simple in our tribe because, I don't know what it is about when we talk about history or culture, people are very, very protective and almost kind of to a point where they don't want to share, maybe because they don't want you to have that knowledge. I don't know how that works. It just seems like protective of their knowledge, but I think you need a resource. You need those people that you can kind of work through these things. If we're talking about cultural, historical identity, we've got to be thinking about, you're right, we don't have many elders left. How do we collect that knowledge and kind of formulate that into a working, living culture again? Because preservation only takes us so far. I'm talking about maintaining that culture.
I think that you can look at our history in our recent history and look at different issues that faced them at that time, and you can find examples of our people coming together, looking at the issue, finding a way to address it, and they take care of it. So that being said, there are many things along the lines. Whenever our people were settled upon the reservation, our old ones, they came together and come to the consensus that our Sundance needed to be put down. We could no longer acquire buffalo. We couldn't take care of the things that needed to be done. There were a lot of ways that were put down. They decided that it was a conscious decision, a collective decision. Whenever the time came for us later on, during the early civil rights movements and different regulation passes that kind of opened the door for us. Our people sat around and they made decisions for themselves again. They decided that their ways they were in the same place. They were looking around and there were no Kiowas left doing Kiowa things. There were very few elders left that knew any songs, that knew any of our gourd dance songs, any of our ceremonial songs. So they gathered themselves and they made they looked at those issues and they made those decisions. And they didn't bring back those man societies, but they recreated something new and modern for themselves today. And that's something that was Kiowas coming together, looking at a problem and seeing how they could fix it for themselves and leave something for their future generations, because that's our job. That's what we're told we're supposed to do. We're supposed to leave these things better for the ones coming. And I think that's what we should be doing. I think we should be gathering together and looking at those things collectively and trying our best to come up with new and decided collectively approaches to those issues.
So we'll get into the question here about funding. Where does the program go if right now, as of yesterday, federal funds for, say, grants to the National Park Service were frozen? Where does the program go if and when federal funding is discontinued?
Well, before we received our federal grant, I had originally did a budget proposal that was submitted with the annual tribal budget and voted upon by KIC. So within the fiscal year, I was allowed a budget for my program through tribal funds, which had I have since switched over to my federal funds to utilize my federal funds since we received those. But contingency plan being temporarily, if that was to happen to us, just falling back on limited tribal funds until those issues are resolved federally.
Okay. So that's really a question of how this would work is, for our citizens, our legislature, the executive branch rolls up our budget, and they have their tweaks or their things that they want to emphasize. But we have a process in that we review it and we ask questions. So in the future, if there's ever a question like, why did their budget jump to this number? Well, it's because they no longer receive federal funding. I'll be prepared to answer that and support it because I support the work that the Tribal Historic Preservation Office does, but there's a process that the legislative branch vets that budget. And we ask questions to department directors. Justify your spending. Why are you requesting this position, or why are you requesting more money out of tribal funds? Because tribal funds inevitably talks about the money we get from the casino operations. And I'm hopeful that number will increase as we start to see these issues arise from the federal government.
Yes.
It's really a concern of mine, and I think we're on the same page with what would need to happen. And the contingency plan is to request tribal funding.
Yes.
And then we hope that our people, like our citizens listen to our podcast, would support that by realizing they're not receiving a federal grant through the National Park Service, through the Department of Interior. We have to support that because ultimately, you said it right when we started, it's about sovereignty. Our culture is tied to our sovereignty because if we lose the ability to have a living culture, i.e. through our language, our dances, ceremonies, we lose our our land, our government. There's a lot of questions that I think are coming in the next 4 years when you question what makes an Indian tribe a nation, an Indian, or
Exactly.
a tribe, if they don't speak their language. And I think that they're going to ask, what makes you different from me as an American? What makes you different? Why should the federal government give you money if you're just giving it out to your people? And I think that's a big question. You hit on it earlier, and I appreciate you talking about that because culture, identity is sovereignty. And, you got to have people that are practicing that culture. And I'm glad that you, as in this position that you're in, overseeing our museum, but that's a lot of work. And I think you need help.
Yes, sir.
I think you need help, managing our museum, managing all this consultation, repatriation, Section 106. Then you put on top of the things you want to do. You talk about engaging our youth, our next generation, teaching those things.
We're limited by way of staff and capacity, but when we pull together, we are able to accomplish amazing things. And even like I said, this previous year, I worked on a bare minimum budget of just basically salary. All of the memorial events, all of the different, commemorations, the youth camp, the teepee pole, the lodge pole harvest, the different things that we have, they were all sponsored by outside entities. They were that was a lot of work and coordination, and a lot of collaboration, to pull those things off. So I already know that, going forward, even with the threats of the federal funding freeze and different things of that nature, that we're able to get some work done because we have established, a good amount of relationships, not only internally and within, with our programs, but also externally within these institutions and agencies.
Well, thank you, Amanda, for joining us on our podcast today, and I wish you all the best in your role here, going on a couple years. This will be 2025, so you'll be in there 2 years this spring, and whatever, as a legislator, whatever we can do to support you, I support you, and whatever we need to do to support your program, and we need to make sure that happens. So, appreciate you being on our podcast today. And any final thoughts?
I want to thank you for the invitation and for your wonderful hospitality.
Oh, you're welcome. For our cultural story and song this month, I've been focusing on. I'm going to dedicate this to my late uncle. He told me this story. It kind of goes along with this song. Everybody knows the Prairie Dog song. It goes along with our rabbit dance. It's included in that rabbit dance, but I was told it was kind of just a children's song. But it also correlates with the story of Sende. And I don't know if a lot of our Kiowa people that live far off, maybe they might be removed or never heard this story. So share it with them, And it's wintertime, so it's appropriate to tell Sende stories. A lot of our Indian people may not realize that these were stories that were reserved for this time. And if you tell them after the first thunder, you're supposed to, you might, something bad might happen to you, might lose all your teeth, all your hair. And so they say, reserve these for wintertime. So these Sende stories. So they say, Sende on hail. Sende was going along, and he was traveling, and he was tall hay, Ma. He was hungry, and I guess he come across this prairie dog village, and he kind of was watching them. They all ran in their holes at first, and they said he come up, and Sende is our. I just say he's a character, not a trickster. We don't have like tricksters, but he was a tricky guy, but he was a character because he could also be our hero for the tribe. But dang, when people draw descriptions of Sende, pretty gangly, kind of like maybe a little narrow mustache, and you might see his ribs. Showing, or might have a big boat or a little boat, but you see all kinds of drawings, and so he's a character. And well, he come up, and I guess at the time he was starving, so he saw these prairie dogs, and he come up and he said, "Hey, y'all, come on out." And he goes, "I want to share something with you all." I guess he found their chief, and that chief come out and he told him, back then, all of our animals could talk Kiowa. So Sende was talking to them in Kiowa, and they came out. They said, "Hey, y'all, come on out. I want to share a dance with y'all, and I want y'all to come and dance with me." Because the chief kind of agreed, and they come out, and he started singing a song, and it says, "Prairie dogs, za, za is prairie dog, zado is prairie dogs, like plural, like zado, zado." So the song says, "Prairie dogs, I want you to jump up and down. I want you to shake your tail." And so that he starts singing this song. Prairie dogs kind of liked it. Zado, zado, tonk ba do, they zado, zado, tonk ba do, they bot on top, they hold your polon, say, hold your polon, say, zado, zado, tonk ba do, they zado, zado, tonk ba do, they bot on top, they hold your polon, say, hold your polon, say. And he went, dicku, dicku, dicku. Wee ha! Chief liked it, so then they all come out, and he said, "Now this is how you dance to this." He said, "He goes, you gotta put your ears up." And Kiowas, they say you put two ears on both sides, because you just put one ear on both sides of your head. It's supposed to be a saw pole, which is an owl. So you're supposed to use two fingers on the side of your head. You jump up and down, and close your eyes real tight, and then you dance. And so they all those prairie dogs come out, and they started, "Zado, zado, tom ba do, they zado, zado, tom ba do, they pot on top, they hold your polon, say, hold your polon, say, dicku, dicku, dicku." But then he had his drumstick, and every time they would say dicku, he'd not bop one on the head. And he said, "Y'all keep your eyes closed. Keep your eyes closed." Boy, he's singing again. "Tado, tado, tom ba do, they tado, tado, tom ba do, they bot on top, they hold your polo, say, hold your polo, say." Boom, man, he knocked another one. Kept on going. That village, he was about to wipe him out, and then there was one prairie dog, kind of didn't trust Sende. Kind of opened his eyes, and he saw him hit one of those prairie dogs with his drumstick. He kind of barked and made everybody wake up and run back into their holes. And so Sende, I guess he was going to cook all those prairie dogs. Got it. But that was a story of how he almost massacred that village, prairie dog village, until that one caught him. Another part of that story was the way I was told by my grandpa is, this wolf come by and then tricked Sende. I guess he had some of them prairie dogs, the ones that he killed, he was boiling them, and that wolf tricked him out of him. Caught up with Sende. He said, "Hey, Sende, are you going to share your food with me? We're both about to starve." Sende goes, "No, I think I'm going to eat them all myself." And that wolf was kind of looking all gangly. He kind of went off, and he said, "Sende," he goes, I want to challenge you to a foot race for the prairie dogs. Because I'm going to challenge you, and see that tree over there? I'm going to race you over there." And Sende said, "Okay, I'll foot race. What do I get?" And he goes, "Well, you're just gambling for me, I guess." I said, "You get to eat them all if you beat me." But Sende said, "Well," because let me see about that. Let me think about that." And that wolf said, "Look at me." He was really trying to hold his stomach in, make his ribs come out. He goes, "Look at me. I ain't going to beat you." Sende said, "Okay." He goes, I guess he goes, "But you got to make this fair. It's got to be a fair race." Sende, "Look at me." He goes, "I can't beat you. You can walk. You walk real good. You might be skinny, but you're faster than me. Because I want to make this race equitable. Because I want you to tie these onto your feet." I guess there's rocks. And Sende said, "Okay." He goes, "What?" He goes, He goes, you don't have to tie them on till you get to the tree. We're going to put them over by that tree. When you get over there, you put them on there. And we're both going to run. Meanwhile, he said, okay, all right then, Sende. They got lined up, took off, and they ran to that tree. Sende put those rocks or something on his legs. Meanwhile, that wolf kind of just real fast. I guess he was lying all that time, kind of so hungry. He kind of turned around halfway and went back and got all them prairie dogs. Was Sende was concentrating on that tree, getting his rocks tied onto his legs. That wolf tricked him, ate all them prairie dogs. So Sende was left there. Things like that happen. It may be hard to believe, but part of our oral tradition. Sende was a trickster, but he'd also get tricked himself. And a lot of good stories. So if you ever have a chance to talk to your grandparents that might know some Sende stories, talk to them about it. So that's what that song correlates with. Ta-do, ta-do, tom-ba-do, they ta-do, ta-do, tom-ba-do, they bottom top, they hold you up alone, say, hold you up alone, say, ta-do, ta-do, tom-ba-do, they ta-do, ta-do, tom-ba-do, they bottom top, they hold you up alone, say, hold you up alone, say, tickoo, tickoo, tickoo. So for the legislative update, the legislature's been working through the Kiowa Gaming Commission ordinance, a revision to be completed in 2024. It's now being carried over to 2025. The process has been rather lengthy. We started off visiting with the Kiowa Gaming Commission. They gave us a draft, and then we got all entities involved to include the Kiowa Casino Operating Authority. They had some concerns or some comments on things they wanted addressed in the ordinance. So we got their notes, had to come back to the Gaming Commission. Now that ordinance has been sent off to the National Indian Gaming Commission for internal review by their legal counsel. So the legal counsel has a lot of specific items they look for when we're talking about a new ordinance. We're awaiting their notes right now to come back to the tribe so that the legislature can approve that ordinance for the Gaming Commission, and we can start regulating our casinos by that document. Currently, it hasn't been sent back to us, so we will keep you informed when that comes back. We also have been reviewing an amendment made to the Criminal Code of 2017. Mike Primus is working those notes. I've not seen a new draft of that document. I know he's been working with the Attorney General, Randy Holmberg, to kind of go through that and formulate a new document so that those are updated. I am sponsoring a resolution. We'll have a public hearing in February that recognizes and honors our Kiowa lands, our Kiowa reservation, and really acknowledges those people who have received the Purple Heart Medal, so to become a Purple Heart reservation. I know that the Kiowa, Comanche, and Apache lands have already been recognized in that fashion, but I'd like to see our Kiowa lands, any future lands, come in and just say we're a Purple Heart reservation. As you know, then there is a new annual budget appropriation coming for 2025 and 2026. The legislature has not received a draft of the new budget created by the executive branch. That is due to come to the legislature for review on February the 1st. So we still have a couple of days. We'll probably get it on Monday, which is going to be the 3rd of February, and start reviewing that. As you are made aware, the federal government has frozen federal funds. I think there will be an impact on grants that have not received their federal funding yet. Primarily when you look at some of the self-determination, the Public Law 93638 grants, some of those grants are funded in January. Primarily when we look at the higher education grant, you're also talking about social services, Indian child welfare. There may be an impact to those programs. So we've got to start looking at what is our contingency should those grants not receive funding. That means that the budget would have to be reviewed, and we'll have to make some changes and possibly request more funds from our casino enterprise to make up the gap to these budget shortfalls. So we've not done an official analysis yet on what that number may be. So we'll be having some conversations with the executive branch on establishing that analysis and finding out what our bottom line is and what we need to make up. I've also been working with our Tribal Employment Rights Office, the TARO Act. We have appointed some commissioners. Burke Thompson contacted me and let me know that they have drafted an ordinance for the TARO office to work under. I haven't read all the document yet; it's pretty lengthy, but we're gonna start working on that with our legal counsel to ensure that their TARO ordinance is updated in 2025. So in the next couple of months, I'll be reading in a resolution into record and hopefully get that office a new ordinance to be operating under. And as you may or may not know, I kind of withdrew my process for addressing the blood quantum. The legislature is going to look at options to pursue options that will bring a vote on blood quantum in the future. The Kiowa Indian Council resolution I was going to submit, I'm going to go ahead and withdraw that, and we're going to go back to the drawing board as a legislature to figure out a way forward. So that's the legislative update. So if you have any questions about any legislation or anything on an agenda for the legislature, give us an email to District 7 Legislature at kiowatribe.org or check our website out, kiowatribe.org, and just find us under the legislative tab. We're also going to post some information on how to contact us in the description below. Deon Deaho for tuning in to this episode of Thongya, our District 7 podcast. The music was provided by Mr. Terry Tsotai. For more information on our legislative work, please visit our website, kiowatribe.org/district-7. Thank you all for tuning in. Hey, I'm I don't I.